I want you to picture a very specific scenario for me, and I want you to place yourself right in the middle of it. So it's 5:30 in the morning on July 31st, 2022.
Right, so it's early, really early.
Exactly. The
Right.
sun hasn't even crested the horizon yet, so the world is still completely submerged in that heavy, damp pre-dawn darkness. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that weird twilight where nobody is awake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you are standing at the edge of Platero Court. This is a dead-end street tucked away inside this totally nondescript, purely functional business park in Strongsville, Ohio.
Just warehouse buildings and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of place designed for like delivery trucks and 9-to-5 commuters.
Mm.
So on a Sunday morning before 6:30 a.m., it is entirely desolate. There's no cross traffic. There are no pedestrians. The silence is just absolute.
And, the architecture of a space like that is really important to keep in mind here, because we're talking about a narrow roadway lined with curbs feeding directly into these brick commercial manufacturing buildings.
Right.
It's essentially a closed loop.
And a closed loop. And tearing through the silence of that closed loop is a 2018 Toyota Camry.
Yeah.
But it is not just driving down the street. It is rocketing down this narrow, dead-end corridor at exactly 100 miles per hour.
Which, in an environment designed for perhaps 15 to 20 miles per hour, it's a speed that completely defies the geometry of the road.
It defies the geometry and it defies instinct. Because here is the really chilling part of this picture. There is zero braking.
None at all.
None. You don't hear the screech of tires fighting for traction. You don't see the nose of the Camry dip toward the pavement from like rapid deceleration. It is pure, unadulterated, wide-open throttle right up until the absolute final millisecond.
Wow.
And then that vehicle slams head-on into the brick wall of the PLIDCO manufacturing facility. It's an impact of just unfathomable violence. And in that fraction of a second, two young men lose their lives. Dominic Russo, who was 20 years old, and Davian Flanagan, who was just 19.
It's just horrific. And, the physical devastation of an impact at that velocity against an immovable brick structure is total. It's a catastrophic transfer of kinetic energy.
Yeah, catastrophic is the word. And that catastrophic transfer of energy is really the foundation of what we are unpacking today on this deep dive. Because if you've been anywhere near a streaming service recently, you've likely seen this highly stylized documentary trending.
Oh, right. The crash.
Yes, the crash. And it dives deep into the story of the driver of that Camry, a 17-year-old girl named Mackenzie Shirilla, who actually survived that horrific impact with only minor injuries.
Which is a miracle in itself, honestly. But the documentary takes a very specific, modern approach to the whole thing. It builds this psychological profile almost entirely out of digital footprints.
Like the social media stuff.
Exactly. The TikTok videos, the Instagram stories, the highly curated online lives of these teenagers. It attempts to frame the tragedy as this modern cautionary tale of toxic relationships and youthful volatility in the digital age.
But our mission for this deep dive is we're going to step outside of that curated narrative because we have a massive stack of source material on the table today, and we're going to look at the cold, hard mechanics of what actually happened.
We're looking at the data.
All the data. We have the official police and crash reconstruction records from the Strongsville Police Department. We have an unfathomable data dump of 93,000 text messages.
Which is just a staggering amount of communication.
It really is. Plus, we have the raw, unyielding telematics pulled directly from the vehicle's black box. And crucially, we have a breaking legal update, a ruling from the Ohio Supreme Court that came down just days ago on June 23, 2026.
And that recent ruling, it completely recontextualizes the entire aftermath of this case. We are looking at this wild collision between human psychology, highly advanced machine data, and the rigid, absolute mechanics of the law.
It is so intense. We are going to dismantle a carefully constructed public defense using undeniable forensic data. And we're going to explore how one of the most catastrophic legal math errors in modern judicial history, literally a failure to look at a calendar, permanently sealed this driver's fate.
It is truly mind-boggling when we get to that part.
I still can't wrap my head around it. But to understand the teardown, we have to establish what we are tearing down, right? So after surviving a 100-mile-per-hour crash into a wall, Mackenzie Shirilla obviously needed to explain how that happened. So what was her primary defense?
Well, the defense she and her family maintained from the very beginning was entirely medical. She claimed to have absolutely zero memory of the event.
Just a total blank.
Right. According to her narrative, she suffered a sudden, incapacitating medical blackout while driving. Specifically, they pointed to a condition called POTS, which she was officially diagnosed with back in 2017.
Okay, POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, right?
Yeah. Yes. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. POTS is this really complex disorder of the autonomic nervous system. And your autonomic nervous system controls all the bodily functions you don't even think about.
Like breathing and stuff.
Yeah, breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, digestion. In a healthy person, when you stand up, gravity naturally pulls your blood downward, right? But your autonomic nervous system instantly tightens your blood vessels and slightly increases your heart rate to ensure oxygenated blood keeps reaching your brain.
Oh, okay. So it's constantly making these micro adjustments.
Exactly. But with POTS, that system misfires.
Misfires how?
Well, it misfires significantly. The blood vessels don't constrict properly, so the blood pools in the lower extremities, your legs mostly. So to compensate for that sudden drop in blood pressure and the lack of blood returning to the heart, the body triggers a rapid, profound increase in heart rate.
Ah, the tachycardia part.
Yes, tachycardia. That just means a fast heart rate. Now, if the brain still isn't getting enough perfusion, enough oxygen, the body deploys its ultimate fail-safe. It basically shuts you down and causes you to pass out.
Which is medically called syncope, right?
Correct, syncope. The body forces you into a horizontal position, so gravity is no longer an obstacle, allowing that blood to finally flow back to the brain.
Wow, okay. That's intense.
It is. So her defense team leaned entirely on this documented 2017 diagnosis. They argued she experienced a sudden syncope event, her body went completely limp behind the wheel, and the ensuing high-speed crash was a tragic medical anomaly, not a criminal act.
I look at that defense and immediately I see an incredible hurdle for a prosecutor. Because if someone genuinely suffers a sudden medical blackout, if their brain is essentially offline, how do you prove intent?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, you can't exactly put a witness on the stand who can peer back in time into her prefrontal cortex. It's a completely subjective internal medical experience.
It's the ultimate locked room mystery, honestly. Except the locked room is the defendant's own consciousness. Disproving a subjective medical claim with only witness testimony is nearly impossible.
Right.
If she says, I was unconscious, a prosecutor can't just stand up and say, no, you weren't. They need external objective data that actively contradicts the internal subjective claim.
And before the prosecution introduced that external data in court, the defense actually had a massive head start in the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to the Netflix documentary, The Crash.
Right, the documentary.
It's a fascinating piece of media because it doesn't feel like typical trashy true crime. It feels like this really empathetic exploration of teenage tragedy.
The filmmakers utilized a very modern storytelling grammar. By relying heavily on vertical video, social media posts, and text overlays, they place the viewer directly inside the digital ecosystem of these teenagers.
It's very immersive.
It really is. It frames the incident as the explosive climax of a chaotic dynamic rather than a calculated, premeditated act.
But I think the undisputed crown jewel of that documentary is Mackenzie's first ever public interview from inside the prison. She sits down, she looks directly into the lens with this incredibly earnest, tearful expression, and she delivers a highly specific quote.
Yes, I know exactly the one you mean.
She says, "I'm not saying I'm innocent. I was a driver of a tragedy, but I'm not a murderer."
A driver of a tragedy. That specific semantic choice warrants real analysis. Because if you think about the word tragedy, right? A tragedy, in the classical sense, is an event characterized by catastrophic misfortune, often caused by forces outside of one's control.
Right, like an act of God.
Exactly. An earthquake is a tragedy. A sudden fatal aneurysm is a tragedy. By positioning herself as the driver of a tragedy, she is actively removing her own human agency from the narrative.
So she's essentially framing the car, and perhaps her own autonomic nervous system, as the active participants, while she was just the passive observer who happened to be stuck in the driver's seat.
Precisely. It's a linguistic reinforcement of the medical blackout defense. She is presenting herself as a victim of her own biology. It's designed to invoke deep empathy, and frankly, it is a brilliant piece of messaging by her team.
It really is. And if the documentary ended right there, fading to black on that tearful face, it might have cemented her as a tragic figure forever in the public eye. In fact, some of the AI-generated summaries of this case that you pull from online reviews, they actually stop right there.
Really? They just buy into it.
Totally.
Yeah.
They completely buy into the emotional climax. But they miss the most devastating piece of footage in the entire film, which happens during the credits. The rolling cameras moment.
Yes, the hot mic moment. This is crucial.
It is wild. So she delivers that powerful tear-stained quote, "I'm not a murderer." The director calls cut, or at least she thinks they do. She believes the performance is over. But the cameras keep recording.
And the physiological and behavioral shift we see in that footage is just staggering. The moment the perceived audience is gone, the profound grief completely evaporates.
It just vanishes.
It's not a gradual calming down either. It is an instantaneous, hard pivot.
She leans over to her defense attorney, her face completely neutral, and asks, "Did I sound crazy?"
Yeah.
And before he could even really answer her, she follows it up with, "I just want to make sure that I'm big on the no intent part."
From a behavioral analysis perspective, that sequence is incredibly damaging. When a person is experiencing genuine visceral trauma, especially the trauma of accidentally causing the death of a partner due to a medical crisis, their immediate concern following an interview is rarely a clinical assessment of their legal messaging.
Right. You don't ask for a critique on your emotional delivery if the emotion is real.
Exactly. The pivot to analyzing how effectively she sold the concept of no intent exposes a hyper-awareness of her narrative control. It strongly suggests the tears were a strategic deployment rather than an authentic expression of grief.
Wow.
She wasn't seeking comfort, she was seeking confirmation that the audience bought the legal strategy.
It completely shatters the emotional core of her defense. It reveals a highly calculated persona. But here's the thing. If I'm her defense attorney, I'm standing up in court and saying, "So what?"
Yeah, that's a fair pushback.
Right. Being manipulative after the fact, being cold, or being highly concerned with your own self-preservation doesn't make you a murderer. It doesn't prove that her autonomic nervous system didn't fail on that morning in July. I mean, a bad attitude doesn't invalidate a POTS diagnosis.
No, it doesn't. And that is a very sound legal defense. A curated persona is not physical evidence of a crime. To secure a conviction, the prosecution couldn't just rely on proving she was a manipulative person.
Right. They need more than just bad vibes.
Much more. They had to provide physical proof that the syncope event never happened. They had to prove her brain was awake and functioning at the moment of impact.
And since you obviously can't interrogate a human brain after the fact, they had to interrogate the car's brain. Which brings us to the second major section of our deep dive, the telematics, the black box.
Yes, the event data recorder.
So the term black box usually conjures images of those bright orange flight data recorders we see on the news after an aviation disaster.
Right. But virtually every modern consumer vehicle is equipped with an equivalent system known as an event data recorder, or EDR.
And the 2018 Toyota Camry, being a fairly modern car, has a highly sophisticated one. How exactly does an EDR function? Because it's not like recording video inside the cabin, right?
No, it doesn't record audio or video of the occupants. The EDR is a module deeply integrated into the vehicle's central computer network. It's often housed under the center console or under the front seats to protect it during a massive impact.
So it's physically shielded.
Very heavily shielded. Its sole purpose is to continuously monitor the vehicle's dynamic state and the driver's physical inputs. And it operates on a loop, constantly recording and overwriting data.
Oh, I see. But when a crash happens, it stops overwriting and saves the file.
Exactly. When the vehicle's sensors detect a sudden violent change in velocity, what we call a delta V event, like a crash or even a severe near miss, that triggers the airbags the EDR locks in that data.
It freezes the frame.
It freezes it. It captures a high-resolution snapshot of the physics of the machine in the 5 to 10 seconds immediately preceding, during, and after the event. It records vehicle speed, engine RPM, steering wheel angle, brake line pressure, and throttle position.
It is the incorruptible physical memory of the event. It doesn't get confused, it doesn't panic, and it certainly doesn't craft a narrative for Netflix. It just prints the physics.
Pure physics.
So the defense claims Mackenzie suffered a POTS-induced syncope. Her body went completely limp, and the car somehow ended up doing 100 miles an hour. Let's look at what the EDR actually recorded, starting with the throttle position.
This is where the medical defense really starts to fall apart. The data extracted from the Camry's EDR showed that in the final 5 seconds before the vehicle impacted the wall, the accelerator pedal was pushed to 100% capacity.
100%.
It was pinned to the floorboard, and it remained there continuously right up until the point of impact.
Let's break down the physical mechanics of that, because this isn't an old 1980s car with a physical steel cable running from the pedal to the engine block.
No, definitely not. The 2018 Camry uses an electronic throttle control system, which is often called drive-by-wire. The accelerator pedal isn't connected to a cable. It's connected to an accelerator pedal position sensor, or APP.
Okay, an APP.
Right. This sensor contains dual potentiometers. As you press the pedal, it changes the electrical resistance, sending a precise voltage signal to the engine control module, telling it exactly how far the pedal is depressed.
And crucially, that pedal has a heavy return spring built right into it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It is engineered with significant resistance to ensure it springs back to zero the absolute moment you remove your foot. To push that pedal to 100%, you have to actively fight that spring tension. You have to exert sustained, deliberate downward force.
Which directly contradicts the physiological reality of syncope. Because if your brain loses oxygen and you pass out, your sympathetic nervous system essentially shuts down motor function.
Right, exactly. Your muscles lose their tone, you go flaccid.
So a limp leg might rest against the pedal, maybe causing 10 or 20% throttle just from the dead weight of the limb.
Sure, maybe a little bit of pressure.
But a flaccid leg does not exert the maximum sustained muscular force required to drive a spring-loaded pedal through the floor mat and hold it there continuously as the vehicle accelerates to 100 miles an hour.
Medical experts and crash reconstructionists align perfectly on this point. The physical evidence of the continuous 100% throttle output is fundamentally incompatible with an unconscious body.
It just doesn't work.
It requires an active, conscious engagement of the musculoskeletal system.
So that's the throttle. But what about the brakes? Because if she was awake, maybe she panicked, maybe her foot slipped. What does the EDR say about the braking system?
Well, the EDR logs definitively prove that the driver's foot never engaged the brake pedal. The manual braking input was recorded at 0% for the entire duration of the event.
Okay, wait. This is where I know people get confused. And the documentary even shows the security camera footage that makes this really confusing.
Oh, you mean the brake lights?
Yes. When you watch the video of the Camry rocketing down Platero Court, just milliseconds before it hits the wall, you can clearly see the bright red brake lights illuminate.
You can. It's very visible.
So if the EDR says the manual braking input was 0, how are the brake lights turning on? Did the EDR malfunction?
The EDR didn't malfunction at all. It recorded exactly what happened. The brake lights did illuminate, but the driver did not illuminate them. The car did.
Oh, wow. Explain the technology behind that. How does the car brake itself?
So the 2018 Camry is equipped with Toyota Safety Sense, which includes a pre-collision system, or PCS. This system uses a millimeter wave radar mounted behind the Toyota emblem on the front grille and a monocular camera mounted behind the rear view mirror. These sensors are constantly scanning the road ahead, calculating the distance and closing speed of objects.
So the car is constantly doing math.
Exactly. It's calculating what's called the time to collision, or TTC. When the computer determines that the TTC has reached a critical threshold, meaning an impact with that brick wall is imminent and unavoidable, and it simultaneously detects that the driver is taking zero evasive action, it overrides the human.
It just takes over.
Yes. The system triggers an actuator in the brake booster, forcing hydraulic fluid into the brake calipers to initiate emergency braking.
So the computer completely bypassed the pedal entirely.
It did. The EDR logs are incredibly granular here.
Yeah.
They record the state of the physical brake pedal position sensor, which read 0%, meaning Mackenzie's foot never touched it.
Right.
But it also records the state of the hydraulic brake line pressure, which spiked, and the brake light switch, which turned on. The data proves conclusively that the automated safety system realized it was about to hit a wall and desperately tried to stop, while the driver made absolutely no effort to do so.
That is, the car was trying to save their lives, and she was actively overriding it with the throttle. That is terrifying.
It's deeply unsettling to look at that data graph.
I can imagine. But there's one more piece of data from that black box that I find even more damning than the throttle or the brakes. The steering data.
Oh, yes, the steering wheel angle sensor. The EDR recorded active manual steering wheel movements in the fractions of a second before impact.
Were they like wild swerves?
No, these weren't wild, uncontrolled swerves at all. They were deliberate micro-adjustments, shifting the wheel slightly left and slightly right.
Because if you're driving 100 miles an hour, keeping a car perfectly straight isn't a passive activity, right?
Not at all. The crown of the road, minor imperfections in the asphalt, the alignment of the tires, all of these things naturally want to pull a vehicle off its center line.
Yeah, you drift.
Right. To maintain a perfectly straight trajectory at high speed down a narrow corridor lined with curbs, you have to constantly read the road and provide opposing physical inputs to the steering wheel. It is active piloting.
I try to picture the physics of an unconscious body in that scenario. If you suffer a medical blackout and slump forward, the weight of your body might pull the steering wheel hard to one side, sending the car into a curb or a parked car.
Yes. Or if you slump backward, your hands fall off the wheel entirely, and the car begins to drift with the camber of the road until it leaves the lane.
What an unconscious body absolutely does not do is process visual data, calculate the vehicle's drift, and execute rapid, precise motor functions to counteract that drift and keep the vehicle perfectly centered in its lane.
Precisely. The active steering data proves the driver was processing information and executing complex physical commands right up to the end.
So the black box didn't just record a crash, it recorded an execution of a plan. The telematics, the drive-by-wire throttle pinned to the floor, the complete absence of manual braking despite the car's automated systems panicking, and the active, calculated steering micro-adjustments, they completely dismantle the POTS medical defense.
The physical data leaves no room for the syncope theory.
It really proves the how. It proves she was awake, aware, and in physical control of that vehicle.
Yeah.
But playing devil's advocate here, proving someone was awake doesn't automatically prove murder.
No, it absolutely doesn't. Proving she was awake only eliminates the medical defense. A sharp defense attorney could easily pivot.
Right. They could argue, okay, she was awake, but maybe she panicked. Maybe her foot got stuck under the mat. Maybe she suffered a psychological break, not a medical one.
Exactly. To secure a murder conviction, the state has to prove the why. They have to prove motive. They have to prove she wanted to drive that car into that wall with Dominic Russo inside it.
And they didn't find that motive in the vehicle's engine control module. They found it in her phone. Which brings us to the human data and the staggering scale of the digital forensics in this case.
This part is just massive.
The Strongsville Police Department pulled a data dump of 93,000 text messages between Mackenzie and Dominic. 93,000.
Which is an almost incomprehensible volume of communication.
How do you even go through that?
To process that, investigators use specialized extraction software like Celebrate. It pulls the raw data directly from the device's memory, bypassing a lot of the user interface, and then they have to comb through it using keyword searches, timeline mapping, and sentiment analysis software.
So it's basically a real-time, time-stamped blueprint of their entire psychological dynamic.
That's exactly what it is.
And when you read through the logs, it entirely validates the documentary's assertion that this was a toxic, volatile relationship. But investigators aren't looking for teen angst, right? They're looking for intent.
Right. And they found a rapidly escalating, terrifying pattern of behavior that culminated in the weeks just before the crash.
Let's still look at that timeline. What did the Celebrate data actually reveal?
The timeline is critical here. The data reveals a very clear trajectory. A key date to examine is July 2, 2022.
Okay, so this is approximately 1 month before the fatal collision on Platero Court.
Yes. The text logs from this specific day capture a massive power struggle. Dominic is actively attempting to establish boundaries and sever the relationship entirely.
And he puts his reasoning in writing. He texts her, "We should just break up." Especially with the threats.
That phrase right there, especially with the threats, is a massive red flag for investigators.
I can imagine.
It moves the dynamic from simply toxic to potentially dangerous. It establishes a documented chronological history of Mackenzie utilizing threats as a mechanism of control and coercion. It wasn't just a sudden, out-of-the-blue escalation. It was a sustained pattern that made Dominic feel trapped.
So we've documented threats in early July. Then we move into mid-July, roughly 2 weeks before the crash. And this is where the vague threats morph into a highly specific physical reality.
Yes. During this mid-July window, the forensic timeline places Mackenzie and Dominic together inside a vehicle. Mackenzie is behind the wheel. An intense, severe argument breaks out.
And the prosecution was actually able to construct an airtight evidentiary triangle to prove exactly what happened during that drive.
They were. It was a very strong piece of police work.
I want to break down this evidentiary triangle, because this is where the concept of intent is locked in for the prosecution. What forms the first point of this triangle?
The first point is the threat itself. During this argument in the car, Mackenzie explicitly threatens to intentionally crash the vehicle with Dominic trapped inside it. She verbalizes the exact method of lethal force that she would deploy 2 weeks later.
But again, I'm playing defense attorney here. I argue that teenagers say horrific things to each other in the heat of an argument all the time. You know, I'm going to kill you or I'm going to drive this car off a bridge are often just hyperbolic expressions of anger, not genuine statements of intent.
Right, people say things they don't mean when they're mad.
Exactly. So how does the prosecution prove it wasn't just hyperbole?
Well, that requires the second point of the triangle, independent corroboration. Dominic actually happened to be on a phone call with his mother during a portion of this argument.
Oh, wow. So the line was open.
The call was active. His mother, acting as an independent ear witness, clearly overheard Mackenzie making this specific violent threat to crash the car.
So it's no longer just a he said, she said scenario found in a text log.
Sure.
You have an adult, independent witness corroborating the exact nature of the threat in real time.
Exactly. And the third point of the triangle anchors the emotional reality of the threat. Immediately after this altercation in the vehicle, Dominic sends a text message to a friend.
And he isn't just complaining about a chaotic relationship, is he?
No, not at all. He states unequivocally that Mackenzie genuinely attempted to crash the car. The tone of the message is rooted in profound fear. He believed his life was in imminent danger right then and there.
Wow. So you take that specific text message, a victim expressing real-time fear for his life from a vehicular attack.
Yeah?
You combine it with the mother overhearing the threat, and you combine it with the July 2nd text where he explicitly begs to break up because of the threats.
It's undeniable.
You have a meticulously documented psychological escalation.
And when you overlay that psychological timeline onto the physical timeline, when you take the explicit threat to crash a car with him inside and overlay it onto the 100% drive-by-wire throttle, the 0% brake pressure, and the active steering inputs on Platero Court, the narrative is complete.
Yeah, it all clicks together.
It is no longer an abstract medical anomaly. It is the execution of a documented plan.
The black box provided the how, and the 93,000 text messages provided the why. And that is exactly how the trial court interpreted the data. Though it's worth noting for you listeners that this case did not actually go before a jury. It was a bench trial.
Yes, a bench trial. In a bench trial, the defendant formally waives their constitutional right to a trial by a jury of their peers.
So no 12 angry men.
Right, no jury at all. Instead, the judge alone acts as the finder of fact. The judge hears the evidence, determines credibility, applies the law, and renders a verdict.
Why would a defense team choose that? Wouldn't you want 12 people who might be swayed by the medical defense or that emotional documentary narrative we talked about earlier?
It's a calculated risk. Often, in cases involving highly complex technical data, like the deep engineering of an event data recorder or the nuanced neurology of a POTS diagnosis, defense attorneys feel a judge is simply better equipped to understand the science than a lay jury.
Oh, that makes sense. A judge is used to complex testimony.
Right. Furthermore, if a case has generated massive, highly negative publicity, a defense team might fear a jury will be driven by emotion and public outrage rather than the strict legal standard of proof. They hope a judge will be completely dispassionate and adhere strictly to the letter of the law.
But in this case, that reliance on a judge's dispassionate analysis completely backfired on the defense. Judge Nancy Margaret Russo presided over the trial. She was presented with the entire scope of the evidence.
Everything we just discussed.
Everything. She saw the curated online persona, the medical blackout theory, the hot mic behavioral shift, and she saw the unyielding telematics and the devastating chronological blueprint of those text messages.
She evaluated the totality of the circumstances, and her conclusion was unequivocal.
In August of 2023, Judge Russo delivered a truly scathing verdict. She found Mackenzie Shirilla guilty on 12 felony counts, including 4 counts of murder.
12 counts.
12. She systematically dismantled the medical defense in her ruling, citing the extreme deliberate nature of the driving. And she sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison.
Which is a sentence that accurately reflects the overwhelming weight of both the physical machine data and the human digital footprint.
So she is convicted, sentenced, and transferred to the Ohio Reformatory for Women. Now, in most true crime narratives, this is where the credits roll, right? The data won, the truth came out, justice was served.
Right, case closed.
But the American judicial system is built on layers of review. There is always an appeals process. And despite this absolute mountain of forensic evidence, the defense team launched one final, desperate legal maneuver.
They didn't give up?
No. They filed for a post-conviction appeal, hoping to relitigate the medical blackout defense and secure a new trial entirely.
And this brings us to the final and perhaps most mind-boggling chapter of this entire story.
It is wild.
because their final attempt at freedom wasn't defeated by a new expert witness or a newly discovered text message. It was defeated by a catastrophic failure of basic arithmetic.
Yeah. This is the breaking news from this very week. On June 23, 2026, the Supreme Court of Ohio issued a ruling that permanently slammed the door on Mackenzie's final hope for an appeal.
And the reasoning behind this ruling is going to be taught in law school procedure classes for the next 50 years. It's that significant.
We need a deep dive into the legal mechanics of this.
Yeah.
The 24-hour loophole and the leap year lapse.
So, to fully grasp the magnitude of what happened here, we have to understand the philosophy of appellate law. The justice system requires what is known as finality.
Finality, meaning a case has to end eventually, right?
Precisely. If convicted individuals could infinitely file appeals, re-arguing the exact same points year after year, the judicial system would collapse under the weight of its own backlog.
Nothing would ever get done.
Exactly. Victims' families would never have closure, and the concept of a finalized sentence would be meaningless. So, to enforce this finality, the legislature creates incredibly rigid procedural rules and strict deadlines.
Okay, I'm looking at the court documents for this ruling, and they are incredibly dense. They keep referencing a post-conviction relief petition and subject matter jurisdiction. Let's translate these concepts for someone who hasn't spent 3 years in law school. What exactly is a post-conviction relief petition?
Think of it as a specialized post-game challenge flag. After a guilty verdict and a sentence, a defendant can file this petition to tell the court, my conviction is fundamentally flawed.
So it's not just saying I didn't do it.
No, they aren't just saying they disagree with the judge or jury. They are arguing that their constitutional rights were violated, perhaps due to ineffective assistance of counsel, or maybe that brand new exonerating evidence has been discovered that wasn't available during the trial. It is a formal request to throw out the conviction and start over.
It is the ultimate legal Hail Mary.
It is. But you can't throw that Hail Mary whenever you want. And that brings us to subject matter jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
Yes. Jurisdiction is simply the legal authority of a specific court to hear and decide a specific case.
Right, like how a local traffic court doesn't have the jurisdiction to preside over a massive federal antitrust lawsuit.
Yeah.
They literally lack the power to rule on it.
Exactly. But jurisdiction isn't just about the type of case. It is inextricably tied to time. Under Ohio law, the moment your official trial transcripts are filed with the Court of Appeals, a countdown clock begins.
A literal timer.
Yes. The legislature grants the court the jurisdiction, the power to hear your post-conviction petition only if you file it within a very specific time window.
And if you miss that window, what happens?
If you miss the deadline by a month, a day, or even a minute, the court's jurisdiction instantly evaporates. The court legally loses the power to even open the envelope.
Wow. Even if there's proof of innocence inside.
It doesn't matter if the petition contains absolute, undeniable proof of innocence. If it is filed late, the judge lacks the subject matter jurisdiction to read it. The door is locked, and the law has essentially removed the key.
Okay, the stakes of this clock are absolute. So what is the specific time limit dictated by Ohio law for this petition?
The Ohio Revised Code is explicitly clear on this. It mandates that a post-conviction relief petition must be filed no later than 365 days after the date on which the trial transcript is filed.
365 days, not a year, but specifically 365 days.
That wording is everything.
Let's look at the timeline of Mackenzie's legal team and see where the wheels fell off. When did her countdown clock start ticking?
The official trial transcripts for her case were filed on October 23, 2023. That is day zero. The clock started. Her legal team had exactly 365 days to draft their constitutional arguments, finalize the paperwork, and officially file the petition with the clerk of courts.
And when did they actually file it?
They filed the petition on October 24, 2024.
Wait, hold on. Let me walk through this math for a second. The clock starts on October 23, 2023. They filed on October 24, 2024. At first glance, that looks perfectly normal. I mean, usually if a contract starts on October 23rd, the one-year anniversary is October 23rd or 24th of the following year.
Right. At first glance, it does look completely normal. It appears the attorneys simply looked at the start date, October 23, and flipped their calendar forward exactly 1 year, assuming the anniversary date satisfied the statute.
But they forgot a massive, ancient mechanical quirk of the Gregorian calendar.
They did. They completely forgot that 2024 was a leap year.
Oh my God.
Yes. February of 2024 contained 29 days. When you are legally mandated to count exactly 365 days and your timeline crosses over a leap day, That extra day consumes one of the days in your count.
Okay, let's count this out so it makes perfect sense for everyone. The year 2024 has 366 days in it. So if you start on October 23, 2023, and you want to land exactly 365 days later, you can't just go to October 23, 2024, because that would be 366 days.
Correct.
To hit 365 days, you have to file one calendar day earlier than the anniversary. The 365th day was actually October 22, 2024.
Your math is flawless, and it highlights the catastrophic nature of their error. By filing on October 24, 2024, they didn't file on day 365. They didn't even file on day 366. They filed on day 367.
Day 367.
They were exactly 2 days past the strict 365-day statutory limit.
How does a team of professional, highly paid defense attorneys handling a high-profile murder appeal with a life sentence on the line make a mistake like that? Didn't they use legal calendaring software?
It represents a stunning failure of procedural diligence. I mean, whether they relied on manual counting, a flawed Excel formula, or simply made a catastrophic assumption about how the word year operates in legal statutes, they missed the deadline.
So what happens next? When the clerk's office or the appellate court flags this and says, hey, you're late, the defense can't just say, oops, our bad, we forgot about leap year, right? Did they try to argue some complex legal technicality to save the petition?
They had to. They attempted a semantic defense. They argued a concept of statutory interpretation. They essentially asked the court to interpret the phrase 365 days, not as a literal count of days, but as a colloquial equivalent for one calendar year.
Okay, so 365 days just means a year in normal human speak.
Right. They argued that common sense dictates a year is a year, regardless of whether February has 28 or 29 days, and that the spirit of the law was just to grant a one-year window.
They asked the court to prioritize the spirit of the law over the strict letter of the law. How did the Supreme Court of Ohio respond to that argument this week?
The Supreme Court took a strictly textualist approach. They flatly and unequivocally rejected the defense's argument. In their ruling, they noted that the Ohio legislature knows exactly how to write the words 1 year when they want a deadline to function as a calendar anniversary.
Oh, wow.
But in this specific statute, the legislature deliberately chose a specific numerical count. 365 days.
So the court is saying, we don't care about leap years. We care about the number 365.
Exactly. The court stated that they simply do not have the authority to rewrite the statute to say 366 days just because it happens to be a leap year. The law demands a rigid count, and the attorneys are expected to possess the basic competency to count those days accurately.
It is stunning. It is a level of procedural rigidity that feels almost alien when you're dealing with human lives. So what is the ultimate final impact of this June 23rd ruling on the outcome of the case?
The impact is total finality. Because of that leap year mathematical oversight, the lower courts ruled, and the Supreme Court affirmed that the judiciary possesses zero subject matter jurisdiction.
The door is locked.
The door is locked, welded shut, and the building has been condemned. The courts cannot legally open the petition to examine the merits of the medical blackout defense. They cannot consider any arguments about flawed trial procedures or constitutional violations.
Everything they worked on is just gone.
The entire substance of the appeal, years of work, potential expert testimony, deep legal arguments, is rendered legally invisible because the paperwork arrived on day 367 instead of day 365.
I want to take a moment to really emphasize the sheer gravity and irony of this for you, the listener. Think about the incredible resources deployed in this case. Think about the high-tech crash reconstructionists analyzing the millimeter wave radar of the Toyota Safety Sense system.
The data analysis alone was incredible.
Think about the automotive engineers extracting drive-by-wire throttle data from an encrypted event data recorder. Think about the medical experts debating the autonomic nervous system and the physiological realities of postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
And the digital forensics.
Yes. The digital forensic units utilizing Celebrate software to map out the psychological timeline of 93,000 text messages.
It was an investigation driven by massive, complex, high-stakes 21st century data.
Exactly. All this incredible technology deployed to uncover the truth behind a 100-mile-an-hour impact.
Yeah.
And yet, Mackenzie Shirilla's final absolute fate, her life in prison, was not ultimately sealed by the black box or the texts. It was sealed because a team of lawyers forgot how the Gregorian calendar works.
It is a stark, almost brutal reminder of how the justice system actually operates. It is an institution designed to seek truth through evidence, yes, but it is simultaneously a rigid, unforgiving bureaucracy governed by procedural rules.
Right.
And when those rules are violated, even through an entirely innocent mathematical error, the system prioritizes its own procedural integrity over hearing the argument.
Which perfectly encapsulates the incredible ironies we've uncovered in this deep dive. When you look at how this story was processed, the reality changes depending entirely on the lens you look through.
It really does. When the producers at Netflix and the various artificial intelligence models summarizing the web looked at this case, they applied a narrative lens. They saw a tragic mystery.
A story.
Right. They saw a highly curated online persona, and they built a story about youthful mistakes, toxic romance, and sudden medical anomalies. They saw the, quote, driver of a tragedy.
But the Strongsville Police Department didn't look through a narrative lens. They looked through a forensic lens. They looked at the telematics. They saw the dual potentiometers of an accelerator pedal held at 100%.
They saw the data.
They saw a pre-collision system desperately trying to engage the brakes while the driver completely ignored them. They saw active steering inputs perfectly centering a speeding car. They saw undeniable intent encoded in the physics of the machine.
And Judge Nancy Margaret Russo looked through an evidentiary lens. She saw the 93,000 text messages. She saw the evidentiary triangle of the threat, the ear witness, and the victim's fear. She saw a chronological runway of psychological escalation leading directly into that brick wall.
But in the very end, the highest court in the state, the Ohio Supreme Court, they didn't look at the text messages, they didn't look at the black box, and they certainly didn't watch the Netflix documentary. They looked through a purely procedural lens, they looked at a calendar, and they saw day 367.
And because they saw day 367, the final reality of this case is now set in stone. Mackenzie Shirilla remains locked behind bars at the Ohio Reformatory for Women.
That's it.
That's it. The sentence of 15 years to life stands exactly as it was handed down by the trial judge. Because of the leap year lapse, her legal avenues for appeal are officially exhausted.
There are no more Hail Marys to throw.
None. Her very first opportunity to even stand before a parole board to ask the state for the possibility of release will not happen until September of 2037.
2037. That's more than a decade from now. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Something that has really stuck with me as we tore down this case.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, we live in an era of unprecedented, inescapable technological surveillance, right? Our cars literally record our every micro-movement. The exact pressure our foot applies to a pedal against a spring, the slight calculated turn of a steering wheel to counteract the crown of a road.
It's all logged.
It's all logged. And our phones archive our every fleeting thought, every petty argument, every horrific threat, saving them in a cloud forever, ready to be extracted and mapped on a timeline. The sheer volume of undeniable physical and psychological data we generate every single day is staggering.
It is.
But in a justice system that relies on and is governed by such massive, complex, infallible data, isn't it terrifyingly humbling that a person's entire freedom, the absolute finality of their life in prison, ultimately hinged on something as simple, analog, and ancient as a leap year calendar?
It's a profound realization. You have the highest, most sophisticated technology of the 21st century colliding head-on with a calendar system designed by Julius Caesar over 2,000 years ago. And the calendar won.
It really did. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to think about this case the next time you get behind the wheel, or, the next time you send a text in anger. Consider how your own digital and physical footprints are constantly telling a story that, once recorded, you can never fully control. We'll see you next time.